You're listening to Forward Faster, bite-sized insights for entrepreneurs.
Sean, I would like to welcome you to the Forward Faster podcast. You are the CEO and founder of ExPrimary, which, as I understand, is a company that is specializing in furthering the field of personal medicine and biomedical measuring. The first thing I'd like to ask is just what are the fundamental problems and a little bit about your technology just to start off with so people understand what it is you're doing.
Sure, yeah. Thanks for the invite. What we're doing is we're aiming to decentralize testing. And what that means is that right now it's difficult for people to access acquiring information about themselves. It's inaccessible and it's very expensive. So what we're doing is we're miniaturizing the instrumentation to allow that to be picked up in different locations. The ultimate goal is to get it closer to the consumer.
When you're saying information, what kind of information are you talking about?
Biological information, information about your cells, information about cytokines and chemokines or proteins that are in your blood that have to do with inflammation, things of that nature.
Is it mostly blood type of tests, or are there other tests that
Yeah, so the immunochemistry is typically what we apply to blood-based tests, but it also gets into some nucleic acids, and in the case of looking at a solid tissue, we can look at biopsies, some of the proteins in the biopsies.
Okay, so why is this idea of personalized medicine so valuable and important as a field? This is a relatively new field.
Yeah, so it's we've been doing this type of analysis in the research and development of drugs for a very long time, several decades, but it just hasn't translated to the clinic because the instruments are really expensive and it requires a trained, highly skilled individual to operate them. A lot of the modern manufacturing and modern electronics have really opened the door for us to miniaturize these things, make them very inexpensive, and then make them easy to use so we can start doing this.
I guess along those lines, what is I hate the term secret sauce, but what is the technology that is behind your vision of this personalized health?
Yeah, so one of the core pieces that is allowing us to do this is actually improvements in miniaturization and optophotonics. So that has historically been the largest cost driver in these instruments. You have a lot of engineers that have to build big systems and align lasers and then pull the signals out. And now with the advent of modern electronics, the amount of So, for example, in the iPhone, in the camera, the amount of optics engineering that is in that little camera is amazing.
Yeah.
But that then has ushered in a rush to miniaturize and optimize those pieces.
Yeah, it is amazing how thin we've been able to make cameras over the course of just a decade or so. It's revolutionary. That's the kind of technology that you're taking advantage of as you're building these smaller kinds of instruments then.
That's exactly right. And we can go a little bit further back in things like Blu-ray. So what happened to the price point of lasers moving over into laser diodes? Those are pennies relative to what they used to be thousands of dollars. So,
yeah, I remember. And your vision is to use this new range of technology and these new price points for a variety of products now.
That's right.
So I guess without getting into too much detail, what are some of the products that you're looking at doing?
Yeah, so things from simple cell counting to flow cytometry, which is probably our highest value product.
And flow cytometry that's when you're measuring moving blood cells. Is that the count you're looking at, or?
We're looking at both the count. So there's a common test that is a flow cytometry that if you go to the physician, you get a CBC test, which is complete blood count. There we're looking at, we shine light on the cells as they're flowing by in a little small, about 100 micron stream of fluid. And we're picking out the size and the density of the cells, and we can tell you, is it a T cell, is it a B cell, is it a macrophage? But when we start then putting antibodies that recognize surface markers of those cells that have a fluorophore on them. We can fly them past lasers, and we can identify surface markers that tell us a whole lot more about the health of the immune system and what's going on with the cells themselves. Yeah. And as the road is rapidly rising to meet us in immuno-oncology and cell-based therapies, the need for these tools to be distributed is immense.
I remember when you and I were talking earlier, you said something along the lines of, even if we're getting a physical regularly, that we're not getting all of this information that's possible. I remember remembering that correctly?
Yes. So the depth of information that we're talking about being able to acquire in a much more distributed fashion is something that's not even done just because it's not cost effective.
Okay.
And a lot of that has to do really with the logistics of the sample. So now you have to schedule an appointment, get a blood sample drawn. It has to go to a central lab. Somebody has to now pay for a series of tests.
Yeah.
And usually there's a reason for that because we suspect a disease state. And that really strikes into what we're going to be able to accomplish is that instead of catching disease in very late stage where the prognosis is really low, we should be able to see trending data. So we're collecting data at a more regular interval from individuals. We can see trending data and step into that in an earlier process or early state of the disease.
Okay.
So right now we typically catch cancers in stage 4.
Yeah.
If we could see trending information, we could probably catch them in stage 1 and 2. And there's a big differential in the prognosis and the outcome for the patient from stage 4 back to stage 1 or 2.
And so the idea there is that you would be able to get this kind of blood work done more regularly over the course of a year. Is that?
Yeah, that's right. So if you the typical person barely goes to the physician once a year.
My dad.
There's an example, myself included. It's time consuming. It's expensive. It's very disruptive. And even if you do manage to go once a year, you basically have one set of data points per year.
Yeah.
And those are pretty useless
in
the end of the day. The trend has to be over many years as opposed to if you could go to the grocery store and have some basic cytokine tests or cell health tests once a month, that we now have that data can then move to a physician or somebody who would review it, maybe an AI, maybe machine learning tool that would raise a flag, and then we can say, hey, come on in.
Right. Yeah, that's really, really interesting. You and I both come from a science background, and we know how important multiple data points are. Just having, if something is changing at some sort of rapid frequency, just testing it in a way that doesn't match up with the rate that something can change is
that's right.
Almost useless.
Almost useless.
It can be deceptive, actually.
Yes.
So you come from a science background. What inspired you to make this kind of a leap into this new type of, well, rather, you're coming in as a scientist. What inspired you to make this jump from being a scientist in a laboratory to being an entrepreneur?
I'd kind of made that transition a little bit earlier. So my PhD work, my thesis advisor had started his own company, so that was my intro into the entrepreneur world. I moved into industry immediately and have been in a range of different size companies, including startups. And oftentimes, I had a lab component and had to build this out. And even so, not talking about diagnostics, but talking about the research side, it's really expensive to build a lab out.
Yeah.
And you have to make critical decisions on, do I want an instrument or do I want somebody who can do the work, right?
Right.
And that's the tension you're left with. And so one of the genesis points of this, of what we're trying to accomplish, is to reduce the cost of setting up a lab.
Okay.
Give people the ability to do work, even at the early stages of research and development.
Yeah, just the general expense of, you have a finite amount of money to work with, and what equipment are you going to buy? I can understand what you're talking about there. I guess with this idea of what are you going to buy, you said before that you have multiple instruments, and I happen to know a little bit about what you're doing. Can you talk about, as a startup, the issues that you are facing as you're trying to roll out a sequence of products relatively quickly.
Yeah. So
what keeps you up at night?
Everything. So is there a night? That's my first question.
Okay.
So just having a startup and pulling all the operational pieces, back office type of stuff together is in and of itself its own kettle of fish, I guess. When you start layering on multiple products in parallel, it's exponential. So
right.
it's all the nitty gritty pieces that I remember in the middle of the night that I didn't accomplish.
Yeah.
And then continue to forget the next day.
Yeah, and there's just a couple of you handling this at this point. You're all trying to work in parallel.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, that's rough. So you are in the Luminate program, and so welcome in for that.
Thank you.
What have you found since you joined here? What's been the biggest benefit for being in the Luminate program?
Yeah, so I guess specifically to what we were just talking about, it has really allowed me to it has helped my focus out, allowed me to actually get some of these pieces accomplished.
Okay.
And so that organizational piece of the support network that's here has really helped that aspect out. And then just the notoriety of the program in and of itself has really
I like that term, notoriety.
it has opened some doors, right?
Okay.
It has caused people to listen. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's fantastic. Again, I love that term, notorious. If we look forward 10 years for you guys, what are you seeing for ExPrimary?
Yeah, so the end goal here is to get these types of instruments and this type of testing as close as possible to the individual. So there's a space that's called CLIA waiver, and CLIA is a guideline that says how labs have to do tests. The CLIA waiver allows the tests to move into the hands of the individual. So like home testing, like glucose sensing or home pregnancy tests are actually CLIA waived. They don't have to be run by a skilled individual in a laboratory setting that is cleared. So if we can bring this type of complex testing towards that or into the CLIA waiver space, we're talking about a significant shift in how people access healthcare and actually how we approach healthcare. So ultimately, 10 years from now, provided we're successful, and I hope we are.
So do we.
We're thinking not about a reactionary approach to medicine where, okay, you got a disease, how do we fix all the symptoms of the disease and maybe the disease?
Yeah.
To, hey, what do we do to prevent disease? Can we catch it earlier?
Yeah.
Right. And that's just a fundamental shift in a global approach towards healthcare. So,
yeah, that sounds amazing. Kind of rolling back to you being at the startup stage, as you said, what advice would you give to someone as a startup? This is not your first startup, so this is not your first rodeo.
Right.
And what would you say to someone who was looking either in your field or maybe just in general as a bit of advice?
Yeah, that's always a tough question. I can wrestle with that for days and then some.
Yeah.
But there's always one piece that sticks out, and it is don't accept no. You're going to hear no over and over and over again. The caveat being that sometimes you're wrong. And no is the right answer.
Okay. So it's is there a time at which you know that no is wrong? What are the symptoms that the no is correct?
Yeah, and I think that's where you have to be a little introspective and test your position. So there's often an emphasis in startup programs to get to the customer and understand the voice of the customer. Is there a market for the product that you're building?
Okay.
Truly, and that's the larger canonical way to think about it. But I think not questioning yourself, but questioning the validity of what you're saying, right? So as a scientist, I'm testing my hypothesis with myself all the time.
I think that's a great way to put that. I guess this is as good a place to wrap up as any. Thank you very much for coming in. Thank you for giving that generalized advice. And best of luck as you guys move forward over the course of the next 6 months of Luminate, and also on in the future as you guys move on to fix everything in personalized healthcare.
And thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you.